Look at your hand right now. The color you see has a name, a social name, a political name. But that name was invented recently. What's underneath it is ancient. Your skin color is not a category. It is a solution to a problem your ancestors faced before language existed. And the problem came from the sun. 2 million years ago, something happened to the human body that changed everything. Our ancestors lost their fur. Not all at once, slowly, over hundreds of thousands of years. And the leading theory is not what most people expect. It wasn't cold that drove it. It was heat. A body covered in fur overheats when it runs. A body with bare skin can sweat. And sweating is one of the most powerful cooling systems in the animal kingdom. With bare skin, early humans could do something almost no other predator could do. They could run for hours, in the middle of the day, under a direct sun. Chase an animal not by being faster, but by outlasting it. The prey would collapse from heat exhaustion. The human would still be moving. But bare skin created a new problem. Now the sun touched everything. And near the equator, the sun is not gentle. Ultraviolet radiation at those latitudes is intense enough to damage DNA inside skin cells. It can destroy a molecule called folate, a B vitamin. And without folate, something critical breaks down. Folate is essential for cell division, for DNA repair, for the development of a healthy embryo. Destroy enough folate in a pregnant woman's body, and the pregnancy fails. In evolution, that is not a side effect. That is elimination. Bodies that couldn't protect their folate didn't pass on their genes. Bodies that could survived. And the protection came from one molecule: melanin. Melanin is the pigment that gives skin its color, but color is almost a side effect. Its real job is to absorb ultraviolet radiation before it reaches the deeper layers of skin. More melanin, more protection. Darker skin. Near the equator, where UV radiation is strongest, darker skin was a survival advantage. Not a racial category, a shield. But humans didn't stay near the equator. Starting around 70,000 years ago, groups began moving north, east, into colder climates, into clouds. And in those places, the equation flipped. The danger was no longer too much sun. The danger became too little. Your skin makes vitamin D when UVB radiation hits it. Vitamin D controls calcium absorption, bone strength, immune function, dozens of biological processes. Without enough of it, children develop rickets. Bones bend, growth is stunted. In populations that moved north, too much melanin became a liability. It blocked the very sunlight the body now desperately needed. So over thousands of generations, those populations evolved less melanin. Not because cold weather bleaches skin. Cold has nothing to do with it. It was always about the sun. The amount of UV radiation reaching the ground. Map human skin color across the globe and it follows UV radiation almost perfectly. Not temperature, not altitude, sunlight. But here is where it gets more complicated. Because humans didn't just adapt through skin, they adapted through food. Some populations in the far north never developed very light skin. The Inuit, many indigenous Arctic peoples. Darker skin, low sunlight, but almost no vitamin D deficiency because their diet was built on fish, seal, marine mammals, foods loaded with vitamin D. When the body gets vitamin D through food, it doesn't need to manufacture as much through skin, so the pressure to lighten skin was lower. Evolution doesn't follow one path. It follows whatever works. And what worked in the Arctic was not lighter skin. It was salmon. Two completely different solutions to the same biological problem. This is the part that schools almost never teach. Skin color is not a fixed category. It is a dial. Turn it up where the sun is brutal. Turn it down where sunlight is scarce. And the dial position of any population reflects thousands of years of pressure from one source. Not God, not race. The angle of the sun hitting the earth. But then something else happened. Humans looked at each other. And instead of seeing adaptation, they saw difference. And instead of seeing difference, they saw hierarchy. They took a biological dial and turned it into a social wall. This is where the story gets darker, because the science of skin color and the politics of skin color have almost nothing to do with each other. One is a chemical record written over 2 million years. The other was invented in a few centuries, for very specific economic reasons. The concept of race, as we understand it today, is not ancient. It is modern, and it was built deliberately. In the 17th century, colonial economies needed labor, enormous, cheap, permanent labor. Slavery existed before, but it was not always inherited, not always permanent, not always tied to appearance. What changed was the need to justify a system that enslaved people for life and passed that status to their children. For that, you needed a story, a biological story, a story that made the hierarchy look natural. So they built one, using skin color as the marker. Scientists were recruited, measurements were taken, categories were named, skulls were compared, brain sizes were estimated, hierarchies were published in academic journals. It looked like science. It had the language of science, but it was built to reach a conclusion that was already decided. The conclusion was, some people are naturally inferior, and the evidence was their skin. Melanin. The same molecule that was protecting folate and building vitamin D for 2 million years was now being used as proof of subhumanity. This is one of the most brutal reversals in human history. A survival tool became a social sentence, and the people living inside darker skin had no say in how that tool was reinterpreted. The biology didn't change, only the story told about it. And stories, once embedded in law and economics, are very hard to undo. Modern genetics has now dismantled the scientific version of that story completely. There is more genetic variation between two groups of chimpanzees in neighboring forests than between any two human populations on Earth. Humans are remarkably similar, genetically, biologically. Skin color accounts for a tiny fraction of the variation in our DNA. Race is not written in our genes. It was written in our laws. And here is the part that most people find genuinely surprising. Light skin did not evolve once. It evolved multiple times, independently. The genetic changes that produce lighter skin in Europeans are largely different from the changes that produce lighter skin in East Asians. Evolution found the same solution twice, through different biological routes, which means there was no original light-skinned human. There was no moment humans became white. There were only bodies responding to sunlight over thousands of generations. And the earliest Homo sapiens, our direct ancestors, were almost certainly dark-skinned because they evolved in Africa, under the strongest UV radiation on the planet. Every other skin color came later, as populations moved, as environments changed. Dark skin is not primitive. It is the original adaptation, the one that started everything. Now think about what that means for the world today. People move across the planet in hours now, not generations. Someone whose ancestors adapted to weak northern light can live under equatorial sun. Someone whose ancestors adapted to intense tropical UV can live in a cloudy northern city for decades. The skin hasn't caught up. It still carries the memory of a place that may be thousands of miles away. That has real consequences. People with darker skin living in low sunlight environments are at higher risk of vitamin D deficiency. People with lighter skin living under intense tropical sun face higher rates of skin cancer. The mismatch between ancestral adaptation and current environment is a real medical issue. Your skin was calibrated for a place, and you may not be living in that place. But here is what doesn't change. Every shade of human skin is an answer to the same question. How much sunlight should this body block? How much should it absorb? Dark skin answered, block more. Light skin answered, let more in. Neither answer is better. They were both correct. For the environment they were solving, there is no hierarchy in that. There is only chemistry, and time, and movement. Your skin color is not your identity in the way society taught you. It is older than identity. older than language, older than the concept of belonging to a group. It is a record, written in pigment, of every environment your ancestors survived. Every freckle, every shade, every gradient across your face. All of it is information about migration, about survival, about sunlight hitting skin in places that no longer exist the way they did. You are carrying ancient geography on your body. And the people who turned that geography into a ranking system were not reading science. They were rewriting it for profit, for control, for a system that needed biology to look like destiny. It wasn't destiny. It was adaptation. And adaptation has no favorites. It doesn't care about nations or names or the categories humans invented. It cares about one thing. Does this body survive long enough to pass on its genes? Every person alive today is the answer to that question, across hundreds of thousands of years. So the next time you look at your hand, don't see a category. See a map. See the equator your ancestors stood under, the clouds they moved into, the fish they ate in winter. See 2 million years of a body trying to stay alive under a changing sky. Your skin is not a color. It is a record, and it was never meant to divide us. It was meant to keep us alive. If that changes how you see yourself, or anyone else, then the story did what it was supposed to do.